Welcome, everyone, to the sports betting show powered by Predictive TV, RotoWire, and Gambling.com. Of course, in the house, one of my favorite guests. I guess, I can tell you you're my number one guest, especially for NFL DFS prop bets. And my lineups have been so much better because I can plug and play some your recommendations successfully. I only made $80 in the one lineup though, but I would have lost, Jim, if I
Ah.
hadn't made the move. I would not have cashed. That is a fact.
And 80 gets you a couple pizzas too. You got to like that.
Well, that's true. Yeah. I mean, double cheese, double pepperoni is a good Sunday night. You had to do something right to get there. But I had been running hot. We mentioned before we went on the air, I was running, scorching hot. And I feel like I'm younger than I really am, but I have the experience of 28 years doing this. I have the 20, probably 30 years that overlaps this career with Wall Street and trading. And when you're running hot in the markets, if you start thinking you have it figured out, the marketing gods and the betting gods have a tendency to know how to rip your face off. And I tried to avoid that last week, and I ended up one game over 500, which, when you're running at 80%, you just don't want that 0-5. That's
Right.
what you try to avoid. So I know you got some really good stuff for us this week for DFS action and some great prop bets that I think dovetail right into some of my initial thoughts here on Wednesday for the Sunday card. So I'll turn it over to you here and I'll let you run with it.
So I'll talk about one player prop that we're betting under and a team to avoid in DFS. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers, Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett, when they post the yardage number for his passing yards, this is a definite under for Kenny Pickett. And here's why. Kenny Pickett looked like he was very good last week, throwing the ball downfield. He completed all of his passes. 3 of them to the other team wasn't so good, throws a catchable football, but he really did well with George Pickens. And so people are going to look and say, wow, he's the real deal. Pittsburgh's going to get things going. Not at Buffalo. First of all, Buffalo has a devastating pass rush that does not require a blitz. They have a rotational pass rush. The Pittsburgh offensive line has been graded well for pass blocking, but it was mostly because Mitch Trubisky was getting the ball out in a nanosecond. Well, Kenny Pickett's going to want to throw downfield. He will not have time for them. And when he does, Buffalo plays a very, very tight zone coverage. They give very, very small windows to throw in. Kenny Pickett's going to be overwhelmed. So the temptation to play George Pickens or, maybe even Deontay Johnson, not so much this week. The Steelers are going to struggle to put up any points. So, again, avoid them in DFS and Kenny Pickett under the yardage total. John, that's the first one I have.
That's good stuff. Real good stuff, because I think if you think 14 points is too many, I was just looking at some of my model projections. It's telling me that they should be favored by 20.5. Which is crazy to think in an NFL game. It's not like we're talking about the SEC with Alabama going up against, really anybody at this point. But my feeling and my intuition tells me that if you're going to bet this game, it's got to be Buffalo. And if anything, use the live in game like we talk about and hope that Pittsburgh actually scores a field goal or a touchdown first. Yes. Then you pounce on it at minus 10.5. But I have seen games, Jim, one game this year in the pros, and I can't recall which one it was off the top of my head, but the opponent scored. Oh, it was Ohio State. It was in college. Ohio State was playing. The opponent scored a touchdown, and the line went up. Ohio State was like minus 17, and the live in-game went to minus 18.5 after the team scored a touchdown in the first quarter.
Wow.
I've never seen anything like that in my life.
No, the algorithm, I bet it didn't stay for long because the algorithm must have been screwed up. There must have been something weird there. And at some point, the human comes in and tries to adjust it. Maybe too late.
Yeah. And Ohio State covered that game. So they obviously covered that live in-game bet too. But nevertheless, I do think that Pittsburgh's going to struggle here. And, reading between the lines of what Tomlin said in the press conference earlier this week, which I think was Monday, he's not expecting much from this team this year. It's a very subdued type of press conference where, well, we're going to work this into the playbook. And then after a couple of weeks, he'll be ready to, work this into the playbook. And And you said it best before we went on the air. Buffalo is not taking anybody lightly, and they're not undefeated. And they're. I think this is just going to be an ugly game. Maybe even first half bet Buffalo looks pretty good too.
Oh, that's a great call on that one. But yeah, you're right. That's going to be a really, really rough spot. And, since the Steelers lost TJ Watt, that is, to me, is the linchpin of that defense. Their pass rush is significantly worse. Then they have to cover longer on the back end, and they're going to get torched there. John, anything else on that game?
No, I don't have anything less to say. I think we beat up Pittsburgh pretty good here.
We did. So the next prop I like and DFS play, Damian Harris over the rushing yardage. And you also can consider for DFS either Damian Harris or Ramondre Stevenson. And the point is, New England's at home. They're playing Detroit. What have we learned about Detroit so far? They can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass. You can move the ball at will against them. Seattle blew up against them. New England runs the ball very well. They're very dedicated, committed to it. They don't want to be in high-scoring games. And this is a perfect setup where Detroit can't even go in with the mindset to stack the box because they literally don't have the personnel to do it. So New England is going to maul them on the ground. They're going to try to control the clock. They're going to try for 40 minutes of possession time. Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson should both see over 15 carries in this game, or right around 15, I should say. And there will be a number of big chunk gains in there. So again, prop betting over the rushing yardage. And Damian Harris has been a little more involved with the goal line. So he's the better of the two DFS plays because I don't think Ramondre Stevenson is going to be needed much as a receiver in this game because they should have fairly neutral game script keeping it close.
I'm with you on this one too, Jim. It's I think this is a 10-point New England win, maybe more. And you're right, Detroit. The offense is fun to watch, but they've scored over 30. I think it's over 35 points 3 times now, and lost those games. So it just, I guess, part of it is they have the defense on the field too much because the offense is scoring much quicker than the average NFL team. But look at what Belichick did with Green Bay last Sunday night. That was just remarkable how he just surgically managed to clock, got his team into overtime, and unfortunately didn't win. But they were double-digit underdogs and really had a chance to win the game at Lambeau, and that would have been something else to behold here. Are you going to bet against Belichick and what you saw defensively against the Packers when they go up against the Lions? I don't think so. So I'm definitely with you on those prop bets as well. I think they're even better than the last one, I think, in the previous game. What else do you have for us, Jim?
So I have one more. And regardless of how this game shakes out from a win-loss perspective, Kyler Murray is going to go under the passing yardage total in this game against the Eagles. First of all, the offensive line we know in Arizona is not a good line. Their pass protection rating has been kind of inflated by the fact that Kyler can sometimes buy time. Not this week. The Philadelphia Eagles have an outstanding pass rush and has gotten better as the season's gone on. The communication in that group is what's increased and has helped the talent, and they have a good rotation of pass rushers. I talked about the Bills with a rotation, but the Eagles have a similar rotation where they keep guys fresh and they have a number of people who can get at you. And Arizona's line will be overwhelmed here, and Arizona has not gotten any ground game going. So the problem here is going to be the cornerbacks for Philadelphia are playing at an extremely high level, not giving up much there at all. So we've seen Kyler Murray trying to make things happen. And against the bad secondaries, he's been okay doing that. But he's needed 46 attempts average over the last couple games to get to like 270 yards. Well, Philly's going to run the ball quite a bit here. The game is going to be shortened a bit. So regardless, again, how the game shakes out, Kyler Murray is not going over the yardage total here.
I agree with you too. And I think this is with all the excitement for Philadelphia Eagle fans being undefeated and the only undefeated team left in the NFL. Historically, teams that come from the East Coast went undefeated, taking on a West Coast team. It doesn't always go that well. And I think last I checked, those Dallas Cowboys are up next. And talk about a look-ahead situation.
Yes.
But I like your take on the shortening of the game by the Eagles, and I think that makes a lot of sense. There is a pretty powerful system that you know wants to say that the Eagles don't win the game, but don't cover. It's gone from preseason. The Arizona Cardinals were priced at -2. They're now +5, and it's going up. Whenever in the circuit contest, whenever we've had a movement of 7 points or more in the total or the side, it becomes a contrarian look, which would put you on the Cardinals this week, which, given how the Eagles have played, is a really tough bet to make. And I'm not saying that I'm going to do it, but if you're betting against favorites in a non-divisional matchup that are outgaining their opponents by 0.75 or more yards per play, which, believe me, doesn't sound like much. If we're talking like centimeters, no, we're not. We're talking like that's a massive number.
Yes.
And they're coming off a game gaining 400 or more total yards and over their last 3 games total. So with that set of combinations, we're looking at an 80% ATS fade on the Eagles. And believe me, it pains me to even say it because I could have so much egg on my face I won't be able to do a show next week if the Eagles win 42-0. But I can't really get away from the 80% clip here, and that just feeds into what I think the game plan is that you detailed with Kyler Murray. The thing that scares me, Jim, the most is I don't know if there's any prop bets on interceptions thrown, but it seems like that defense of the Eagles is almost baiting quarterbacks at this point to make mistakes.
Yes.
They're
Yes.
setting them up, and they just feed off of it. And nobody talks about Fletcher Cox. I mean, that guy is playing. He was supposedly washed up 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and he's an All-Pro. He's playing incredible on that defensive front. So anyway,
You,
that's my rant.
John, when you talk about Fletcher Cox, it's now he's not the guy. There's a number of guys around him, and now he's not seeing those double teams on the interior he used to see. He's seeing some single teams, and all of a sudden, fountain of youth, right?
Yeah, I can't agree more. Just think what he would have been in single coverage like 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Man alive. The Carson Wentz thing in Washington wasn't a fluke either when they sacked him 9 times. Granted, Wentz holds onto the ball, half an hour too long on every single play.
Yes.
But Murray's a scrambler, and he'll extend the play, and I think that feeds right into the Eagles' defense. And throwing across the field, across the body, that's not going to work against this defense, regardless if they're playing the East Coast or the West Coast. So I guess I gave that system out for food for thought. You can do what you want with it. If you like it and it helps you make a decision, great. But I think I just confused the hell out of myself.
Well, sometimes those systems work, and you got to look to the system because look, how many times do we see a game on paper? It never makes sense, but you win bets, John, because you see things that the public doesn't see. The public sees all these things, and it looks like a clear Philadelphia romp. But we know, this because that's why you're good at gambling, because you point out things that the general public doesn't see.
Well, if it was a sure thing that the Eagles were going to win, they'd be favored at 14 points like Buffalo.
Right? Exactly,
Yeah,
100%.
And in the circa the last couple of years, when those line movements have moved 7 points in total, and you fade that move, it hits 69% of the time.
Yeah.
Overall, just blindly doing that. Now, is that going to continue? I have no clue, but it's done pretty well over the last couple of years. And with the sentiment of the betting fervor, for lack of a better word, Jim, on the Eagles is off the charts. I run this little Twitter sentiment Python app, and the percentage before the season started for the Eagles was that they were lucky to be 500. That would be a good season for Philly fans, to get to 500. Now it's Super Bowl or bust. And it's all in 4 weeks. And those kind of trends usually, revert back to the mean. That's the only way I can describe it. So I'm not rooting against the Eagles. I would love to see them get 6-0, 7-0, 8-0, and just roll because they obviously deserve it. Anything else for us, Jim?
No, I think this was great. I'm looking forward to next week. And there's no London game, having you back on the Saturday show on the RotoWire platform. So we'll definitely have you back on there. Anytime there's not a London game, John Ryan's going to be hanging out with me on Saturday mornings.
That's awesome. What a way to hang out on a Saturday morning, too. There's nothing better. Those are like the days off for me now. It's like, the games are going on Sunday. I'm already looking at the next week. And that's what everybody does. But then you get to Saturday, you kind of breathe and you relax a little bit. And there's some great college football matchups this week, too. That I have some videos out now on the Twitter feed that are free, and you can take advantage of those. But before I let you go, Jim, I'm just going to mention one play here. I want to see what you think. The market is telling me to be all over the New York Jets against the Miami Dolphins, who were, a week ago, they were going to go to the Super Bowl and play the Eagles.
Yes.
So I think that is a really good matchup for the Jets. And I guess for the show purposes, that would be my bet for this show, I guess. Take a look at the Jets money line, sprinkle it a little bit. And I guess that's about it.
That sounds like a winner.
Anything you want to share about RotoWire and what's going on over there?
Yeah, so always good stuff going on at RotoWire. If you haven't seen our site and you like my content, John doesn't work there, but John is part of the team because we work together this way. But go to rotowire.com/try. 2 days free behind the paywall. No credit card needed to do that. I'm on the SiriusXM show. You'll catch me on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Channel 87. Saturdays 1 to 3 Eastern. Sundays 9 to 10 Eastern. Power, wherever you get those set up for those fantasy football lineups. And again, always on rotowire.com and Twitter at Jim Coventry NFL. I'm going to do a data dump today, actually. Go over a lot of trends that can make you profitable in props, DFS, and all the like.
Like I said at the beginning of the show, you're the go-to guy. DFS, fantasy, the prop bets, the games, it all just makes us so much better. And as I always say, you can't do this in a closet. You can't find a trend and go, well, I'm not going to share it with anybody. This is mine. Well, that's nonsense.
Nope.
You only learn by keeping your mouth shut and your ears open and listening to experts like Jim. Period.
And John.
Yep.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet, Jim. And until the next time, I always end the shows with two things to remember: is to bet with your head and not over it. And may all the wins be yours.